Today I'm going to show you how to make a duplicated text effect in After Effects. Kind of looks like this. There's lots of ways you can create this effect, but I'm going to show you a quick, dirty, and easy way. So I have this text animation sample, and I'm just going to delete that. We're going to start from scratch. So we'll double click on our type tool and we'll type tutorial. And we will hit Control Home and then Control Alt Home on our keyboard to center it up in our composition, and then we're going to select all caps. I just think that looks better. So next what we're going to do is we're going to right click on our text and pre-compose. We'll call this tutorial comp holder. Could be anything you want, and now I have this text. So what I first want to do is go in to this tutorial comp holder by double clicking on that composition, and then I want to change the height. So I'm going to go to composition settings, and I'm going to scale this down. I'm going to bring the height down. I realize I should put the composition settings off so we can see what's happening. And what I'm trying to do is just fit the tutorial text in that comp. So let's just say 192. Hit Control K to open up our comp settings. I'm actually going to scale it down just a little bit more, just so we're getting the very, very top and bottom. So yeah, 130. That looks good. Now I want to make sure that this is centered, so I'm going to hit P on my keyboard, and I see it's at 65 for the Y position. And if I hit Control K to see my comp settings, I want to make sure that this is exactly half and that the composition text is centered directly. So I realized it was off just slightly. So again, Control Home to center an object, Control Alt Home to center the anchor point into the center of that. So once that is set up and centered directly in the composition, because math is important, we're going to come out of our text comp holder and we're going to add an effect. So we'll go to our effects and presets over here, and because I have so many plugins, it wants to load. Once that's ready, let's look up motion tile. And we will drag this on our timeline. Now, this is where the fun happens. We're going to create that duplicated text effect. And we can go to our output height in that effect, and we can bring this value up and down. So I'm going to move my playhead to, let's say, the 8 frame mark, and I'm going to set a keyframe and make sure that the output height is set to 100. That's just going to be the default, and from here we can scooch forward, let's say 4 frames. So we'll just move our playhead 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to set this to a new value. Now I want to scale up the output height until I see the first line of text. So 290 sounds good, so 290. And then what we'll do is we'll hit U on our keyboard with our layer selected, and that will show us all of our keyframes. We'll go forward 4 more frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll just scale it up once more. Now this output height is at 500. Let's go forward a couple more frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then set this to the new value. And then we'll go forward 4 more frames, 2, 3, 4, and then bring that up so it fills up. Alright, so if we play this back, looks okay, definitely needs some polish. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a box around all of our keyframes here and right click on one of them and set to toggle hold keyframe. And what that's going to do is, instead of interpolating between the values for the output height, it's just going to snap to all of these new values. So if I play that back, very cool. Now I realize it is a little slow, so what I want to do to make this feel a little bit more energetic and lively is I'm going to, with all my keyframes selected, hold Alt on my keyboard and then pull this in just a little bit. And that would just scale down the time at which the animation occurs. So now if I play this back, cool. Now what I want to do is create a fun little effect for the initial text to animate on. So what I'm going to do is double click on our tutorial comp holder and go into this composition, and within this we're going to look up an effect. So we'll look up decoder. And in case you didn't know, After Effects has a lot of base level default text animations that you can do to start out. So this is actually perfectly fine for a situation like this. We'll take the animate in decoder fade in text, we'll drop that in, and we can see if we play this back, we'll get this cool looking type effect. Now, it is very, very slow, and it actually is going outside of the bounds of our composition. So what we're going to do for this preset is we'll turn off the keyframes. So that means we're getting rid of all the keyframes, and then we'll add a keyframe once again. We'll go forward to the 8 frame mark, and we'll set this to 100. And if we play this back, now we get that effect. And then what we want to do is go back to our duplicated text comp, our main composition, and let's just see how that looks right now. Very cool. We're definitely getting somewhere. So now what I want to do is animate this out, and I want this to feel a little bit more impactful. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit S on my keyboard with my layer selected, and then I'll hold shift and hit R on my keyboard, and that will bring up my scale and rotation properties for my layer. I'll double click on those stopwatches to add some keyframes, and I'm going to go forward about 5 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to set the scale to 120%, and then the rotation, the second value here, to 45, and that's going to rotate it just a little bit. Now I do realize that the text is now not filling up the entire frame, so I'm going to hit U on my keyboard and come to the last keyframe on my output height, and I'll just make sure I bring this up by a lot. And the reason why I'm doing that is so now when we rotate it, it should technically fill it up. We're actually missing just a little bit, so we'll just go to that value and we'll just scooch that up a lot more. Play that back. There we go. That's the effect I'm looking for. Now I want to select those scale and rotation properties, and I'm going to hit F9 on my keyboard, and that's going to ease those animations just a little bit, make it feel a little softer. Now I'm going to go into my graph editor, and I'm going to select the last keyframe for this scale and rotation and pull this handle out, and that's just going to make it ease in a little bit more. Select these first keyframes and pull it out just again, and let's give this a playback. Cool. Now I realize it's a little bit intense, so I'll bring the scale down to 110 and then the rotation to 25. So it's not as crazy, and then I want to animate this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these motion tile keyframes, and I will Control C and then Control V. Now that's going to basically duplicate those keyframes, but I want to time reverse them. So I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to keyframe assistant and time reverse keyframes. And what that will do is say, okay, I want you to reverse the values of those keyframes. Now I realize it does a weird thing whenever you choose that setting, so I'm going to make sure that I select all these keyframes once again, right click and toggle hold keyframe. So now if I play this back, comes down, but what I want to do now is duplicate the scale and rotation keyframes, copy them, and then paste them, and then I'm going to do the same thing, time reverse, and then for this last keyframe, for the scale property, I'm actually going to set it to 0%, so the text will animate out completely. Now I realize I made a little boo-boo when I set the scale to 0%. I had all of my keyframes selected for my scale, so it changed all of those keyframes. So instead, I just want to make sure I have that last keyframe selected, set that to 0, and then if I play this back, not bad. Now, I'm going to fuss with this just a little bit more. I am going to bring the scale and rotation keyframes in just a little bit so that it's sort of overlapping with the text animation there. And I realize we're actually not scaling up, so make sure I set the first keyframe to scale at 100. Then I'm going to set that to 0. Now let's play this back one last time, and you can see what the final result looks like. Doesn't look too bad. I'm pretty happy with this, and you can use all of these techniques for your motion graphics videos. This is a super simple thing that you could do to help bring a little bit more life to your content, and I hope you learned something. If you did, let me know in the comment section down below, or if you have questions, comments, concerns, whatever else, comment section is down there for that as well. Hit me up on Instagram at JohnJagsNey if you have any specific questions. And I will leave you with one final tip, and that is to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and you'll make some. Goodbye, my friends. Bye.